Thank you for joining me. You are watching a preview of the new Kim Iversen show, which will be live streaming exclusively to Rumble, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, beginning January 2nd, with clips published on other platforms. Be sure to check it out. Can't wait for it. Very exciting. We're doing a bunch of testing right now. That is what you're watching. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get to it. Yesterday, the 5th installment of the Twitter files was released, this time by Bari Weiss through her Twitter account. Now, the latest installment revealed the chatter behind closed doors that led to the banning of Donald Trump from Twitter while he was still president of the United States. Ultimately, the threads show there wasn't a good reason to ban Trump, but they did it anyway. Here are the last two tweets made by Trump the morning of January 8th, 2 days after the events at the Capitol. The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. And here's the second tweet. To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. Now, neither of these two tweets incited hate or violence, nor did they violate Twitter's terms of service. The internal threads published in the files showed numerous employees agreed that neither of these tweets broke any of the rules, yet they scrambled to figure out a way to ban him anyway. They went through a variety of possibilities. If he didn't directly violate the terms of service for inciting violence, maybe they could get him for violating the rules of using coded language to incite violence. Some Twitter employees argued the term American patriot could mean rioters, and that Trump should be labeled a leader of a terrorist organization. In that context, he's possibly using coded language to rile up his followers to commit acts of terror. They even compared him to Hitler or the Christchurch shooter. Now, ultimately, Twitter executives landed on banning Trump due to the risk of further incitement of violence, after which Twitter employees exploded in celebration and began discussing other ways they could ban viewpoints they disagreed with, specifically regarding what they called medical misinformation surrounding COVID-19. One employee even stated on January 11th, very excited to see us handling more categories of misinformation. For the longest time, Twitter's stance was that we aren't the arbiter of truth, which I respected, but it didn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling. Interesting that censoring others gives this person a cozy feeling on the inside. Not everyone was so enthusiastic about censorship. During the conversation about banning Trump, one employee shared some doubts, stating, maybe because I'm from China, I deeply understand how censorship can destroy the public conversation. The response? I understand this fear, but I also think it's important to understand that censorship by government is very different than censorship of the government. I wonder if this is the excuse for every single American-backed regime change around the world. We're not silencing the people, just their government. Bari Weiss and her team at the Free Press, who worked on scouring through the Twitter files, showcased the hypocrisy of how Twitter chose to treat Trump versus other leaders around the world, many of whom openly actually call for violence. They point out the former Malaysian prime minister who stated, Muslims have a right to be angry and to kill millions of French people for massacres of the past, and the Ethiopian prime minister who literally demanded war by calling on citizens to take up arms against the Tigray region. And 3 days later after this tweet, on November 3rd of 2020, a literal war broke out, the Tigray War. Now, those tweets and many more like it were never removed, nor were their accounts banned. In fact, Twitter instead placed a disclaimer on the tweet from the Ethiopian prime minister that stated this tweet violated the Twitter rules about abusive behavior. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. It's interesting that Twitter would deem a tweet that led to war to be in the public's interest, but didn't think direct messages to citizens from the President of the United States to be. It's also very telling that so many people at Twitter believed Trump's 75 million voters, who he called American patriots, should be thought of as terrorists. Many people are thinking, what's the big deal? Twitter is a private company, and if they choose to censor people with ideas they don't agree with, then who cares? That's their right, and it isn't against the First Amendment. Okay, that might be true. The First Amendment protects citizens from censorship and punishment from the government and doesn't apply to private companies like Twitter. It's well known that social media companies are heavily staffed with liberal donors to the Democratic Party that because of this bias, it makes sense that they would limit and hinder conservative voices and ideas they not only disagree with, but that they find morally reprehensible. Now, they denied that they did this, by the way. Many liberal pundits and even progressive leftists claimed it was a false narrative that conservatives were being targeted and censored. But now, through the various Twitter file drops, we have proof they did. And now that the proof is out there, those same people who denied it are saying, so what? Now, first of all, it's likely many of these social media companies censored its users because the government threatened them with regulation. That could be argued as a violation of the First Amendment. And I hope after all of these files are released, Elon Musk considers suing the United States government on behalf of his company, Twitter, for violating the company's First Amendment rights. Secondly, we Americans pride ourselves not only on free speech that's free from government intrusion, but we Americans pride ourselves on a culture of free speech as well. Would we only care if it's the government burning books, or are we appalled when others do it also? Free speech isn't just a legal First Amendment issue. It's a culture we Americans pride ourselves on having that some other nations don't. We should demand it from not only Washington and our state and local governments, but we should demand it from every company and person as well. Hearing different opinions and ideas and making up our own minds is the American way. At least it's supposed to be. But certainly, a massive social media company with influence in politics and public opinion shouldn't be censoring world leaders, no matter how much their employees may disagree with them. By doing this, they have directly interfered with our democracy by limiting what information and ideas voters have access to. It's appalling Twitter not only took this unprecedented step, but it's appalling they cheered after they did it and looked for more ways to limit more ideas. Rumor has it the next set of Twitter files to drop will be surrounding their censorship regarding COVID-19 and may even contain some incriminating information about Dr. Fauci. We will, of course, keep you up to date. And as of yesterday, Drs. Robert Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough were reinstated to Twitter, something users had been calling for a while since Elon Musk took over, and they have now been reinstated. So we will see what those Twitter files next have in store from what was going on behind the scenes when it comes to censorship in the social media giant. You are watching a preview of the new Kim Iversen show, which will be live streaming exclusively to Rumble, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, beginning January 2nd, with clips published on other platforms. And we are hoping you will join us after we officially launch. It's going to be great. Thank you so much for being here. All right, coming up. Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested one day before he was set to testify to Congress. Who does this benefit more? SBF, who is now sitting in jail waiting to be extradited, or Democrats, who no longer have to ask their campaign mega donor tough questions? We'll talk to someone who lost thousands in the scandal next. Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested yesterday in the Bahamas one day before he was set to testify to Congress. U.S. Security and Exchange regulators have charged SBF, which is what he's known by, with defrauding investors and customers out of billions of dollars. According to the indictment, which was unsealed this morning, SBF is being charged with wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Since Sam's arrest comes one day before he was set to testify before Congress, the real people let off the hook are Democrats who took massive amounts of donations from the crypto exchange founder. People like Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who recently changed her tune. At first, she was saying she didn't want to subpoena SBF, only to later say she was, in fact, in favor of a subpoena after she received some intense pushback. She now seems to be perhaps feigning surprise by his arrest, which is preventing his testimony, stating, quote, "The public has been waiting eagerly to get these answers under oath before Congress, and the timing of this arrest denies the public this opportunity." Sure. So Dems now won't have to grill SBF after he funded so many of their campaigns. They also won't have him to ask questions, forcing him to account for like the missing billions that have disappeared to where no one really knows. But there's a lot of questions surrounding political donations and massive donations to Ukraine. Now, as this story continues to unfold, there seems to be more and more questions about the links between political figures, Ukraine, where all this money donated actually went, and with Sam Bankman-Fried in custody and most likely to be extradited to the US from the Bahamas, most of the answers will not come for some time. Here to discuss is a crypto enthusiast, former stuntman and director Ruben Langdon, who lost thousands in this scandal. Ruben, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing the reporting on this.
Yeah, so unfortunately, you were one of the victims of this. So, can you just walk us through from the beginning, like how did you lose money in this scandal and how much, if you don't mind us asking?
Sure. Yeah, it's so I've been using FTX as an exchange. I don't really keep much money on there. It's usually just to as an off ramp and on ramp. Most enthusiasts like myself keep our cryptos in cold storage. Um, but FTX had some of the best rates in as far as buying and trading. They were really low compared to some of the others. And the impression in the industry was that they were safe place to do business, and that they were talking to regulators. Like if anybody was going to get shut down, they would be probably the last. That was sort of the way the industry viewed it because of the way they positioned things. So there was talk on the interwebs with the CZ's tweets that there might be some trouble, and I did have a little on there that I took off. But then when I guess the news broke and I wasn't up to date on exactly what was happening, the price of Bitcoin dropped. So I was like, all right, buying opportunity, right? So I and also I guess in that time there was a lot of different narratives and things going on. So I think at one point CZ stepped in on Twitter and said he was going to buy FTX, and that seemed like that was, oh, okay, well, everything will be okay. So I thought I'd do a quick trade, and I unloaded some money. It was actually $5,000, and tried to buy the dip. And then as soon as a couple of days into the news, then all of a sudden FTX is insolvent. You're not going to be able to get your money off, and they were even warning people to take your money out. But because I had just unloaded money, they hold. There's a holding period, and I was trying to get it out, but by the time it was just a matter of days, and we got the news that there's a hack. The Bohemian government's going to be taking all the money, or there was all these things happening, and then all of a sudden you go to the site and it's just filed for bankruptcy, Chapter 11, and
Gosh.
then yeah.
So you
So
lost $5,000. So is there any hope of getting this back?
I would think not. I would think as messy as this, I've been following it. So as messy as this whole debacle thing is, it just seems like a rabbit hole. Like to have any hopes of getting my money is slim next to none. However, there was that whole 2017. There was a big exchange, I think, out in Japan, Mt. Gox, or there's been a few exchanges over the years that have gone down, and some people have gotten their tokens, but I'm not optimistic on that.
So how did that did you get, like, when you would log in, like a big pop-up on the screen that says,
Yeah.
or we've it's bankrupt now, your money's gone? I mean, how does it, did you get any sort of email saying your money's gone, you're not going to be able to get it? Was there,
No.
or is it just you just can't get the money, and do you see it in the account still?
Well, initially I did, and then I couldn't remove it. But then when everything got shut down, then now it's like a Chapter 11 page or something, and there's not that I was digging through it. I guess there's some forms and stuff I can fill out, hopefully to make the case. But it was very much as like a government form. It wasn't anything promising, or like, oh, here's your account number and here's how much you had and hang on to this and you'll get your money back. There's none of that. So I could only imagine the people who had more on the account, more money on their accounts and more money in that whole thing, and the bigger businesses affected, and it's been a mess. But I jokingly say they can, the universe, the world could have my money because all this stuff is getting exposed now. So the bright side of this, for me, because I've been following crypto and these bad actors and the whole monetary system and what's happening, and it seems like there was it seems like a bit of a planned implosion. If it wasn't planned, then they're definitely taking use and using this in the best ways as far as the regulation and having those conversations, which is a good conversation to have. But it just seems very auspicious, the timing of all this and the players involved. And but it is seeming to get out there and it's being exposed. So I'm like, you know what, this is a good direction for crypto. We definitely need these bad actors fleshed out of the space, and we need, however the U.S. government's going to react to the crypto and this situation, we need clarity on that too. So whether they're going to stay, pushing the Fed coin and the CBDC, if that's going to be their stance, let's be clear on that. Let's stop dilly daddling and let's get to the truth. So we can make, as consumers, we can make our decisions and figure out, is Bitcoin going to be a thing that we can use in the future? Which bad actors do we need to stay away from? Like it's in the big picture of things, this is a good thing that we're moving in this way.
So you do think there should be some more regulation?
Oh, I hate regulation. No, personally, no regulation. But I know for the big investors, for the big money people and institutions, they who are reliant on, more stable monetary systems and these kinds of things, they're still slaves to the dollar. So they're going to want some sort of clarity on if they do dip their toe into crypto, how is it going to work with
Right.
their processes. So I understand that, and I'm okay with us moving in that direction so they can onboard into this space. But personally, no,
Okay.
definitely not into regulation. Most of the hardcore Bitcoiners, we want to stay away from regulation as much as
Yeah.
possible.
So are you upset that he was arrested the day before he was supposed to be testifying? I mean, today he was supposed to testify to Congress. Now the only person left is the CEO who took over, who also handled the Enron bankruptcy. And now there's a lot of questions, that a lot of people are having. Like, I mean, there's a plethora of questions. I mean, are you worried or are you upset that he's not sitting there answering to Congress?
It's kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, there's I was on a one of the Twitter chats that Mario in that space, the Twitter Spaces, and I was on live when the news came out, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's been arrested! This is great!" Everybody's excited that finally, and maybe there's going to be justice to this whole situation. But yes, simultaneously, it's like, wait, the timing of all this is really kind of odd. And what's really going on here? Are they just shielding him so he doesn't, get in too much trouble speaking, as he has been these past few weeks? He's been doing these public talks, and not all of them have been going the way I think him and his lawyers probably
Right.
want it to go. But yeah, so it's both. It's like, yes, this guy's been caught, maybe justice will be served, but at the same time, it's like, oh, this is just, there's a lot of fishiness in this whole thing, as far as the timing, the Bohemian authorities, where's that money that they took? There's so many still questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, to me, the shadiest part of his arrest is really just that Dems don't have to answer. They don't have to ask the questions that they don't want him to answer, actually, because it might expose and even implicate some of them in some ways. Or, even if it's not
Yep.
illegal, that what they may or may not have been doing, it's still maybe in bad taste, or the American public, if they found out, would say, hey, I don't really want a politician who's going to be doing XYZ, or where, or funneling the money here or there. I mean, there's just a lot of things that could be exposed in that testimony. And I think that the fact that they weren't even going to subpoena him, Maxine Waters saying, oh, no, we're not going to subpoena him. Then she changes her
Right.
mind because she's getting pressure from people saying, what are you talking about? Billions of dollars are missing. And then suddenly, okay, yeah, yeah, we'll bring him in. And then he's arrested, so he doesn't have to come in. I mean, I'm sure he would prefer to be in front of Congress rather than arrested for himself. But
I
people in
think the big
Congress are, they don't
the
have to hear the answers they don't want to hear.
well in the in and we've seen a pattern of these high end people, the Epsteins and the Maxwells and whatnot, sort of, and they sort of seem to be rolling in the same circles. So there's questions about, is Sam even going to make it through this?
Yeah, right. Is he going to
Um,
be Epstein? I mean, everyone is, and that
right.
was one of my first things that I thought about was,
Mhm.
okay, at some point, if the guy remains alive in jail, at some point he's going to have to answer these questions, right? I mean, the questions that Congress wanted or should have asked him today, he's ultimately going to have to answer one way or another, whether it be sooner or later. And will he make it to that point, or will he be,
Right.
suicidal?
Yeah, yeah, and that's an unfortunate pattern that we've seen in these situations. So, I again, like I said, do I is my money ever going to come back? That is
Uh,
right now. This is like a roller coaster of exposures. These stories, the players. There's a lot of people in the crypto space that weren't aware of how messy things have been, and with our monetary policy and with
right.
these shady characters and interesting political ties to all this other, Ukraine and all of it, right? So that is the ticket I bought, the $5,000 ticket to the show, to
Uh,
see how humanity responds and wakes up to stuff that's been going on for a long time. So I'm
yeah.
I'm just happy that the conversation is being had. You're reporting on it. Others are reporting on it. It's coming. It feels like it's coming to light.
Yeah. Well, do you still have hope for the future of crypto, or are you feeling like,
Oh, that's the best part about all this is, a the industry taking, the second largest exchange, being taken out overnight, right? And we did see a drop in the Bitcoin price from, I think it was hovering around 19,000, and then it went down to the 16s, and that's kind of where it's been. But to see that little bit of a drop, it's kind of a nothing burger compared to the size of this debacle in the industry. So, um, a lot of the analysts and stuff, and including myself, are excited to see how well Bitcoin, particularly, is sort of going is fighting through and staying above water, in a sense that there's no major drops, and it seems to be working. Everything's working fine. People, there's still interest. There's still a ton of development. So it just shows you the resilience that Bitcoin has against these types of, bad actor moves.
well, I'm right there with you. I try not to check my crypto wallet, the the balance,
Really?
because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, it's a little bit disheartening here and there, and you open up the account and you're like, whoa, it should have been, at one point it was this much and now it's this much, and I've just held on to it thinking, okay, maybe it'll come back up at some point. Um, you know,
yeah. I mean, long term, we have the balls in our court. Bitcoin being this decentralized, the largest decentralized
I have
sort of
Ethereum,
computing
so
power. Ethereum too. I mean, there is some questions out there in the community about its safety, in the sense that now that it's proof of stake, is it going to lose some of its decentralization? And there's those questions, but ultimately, both of these platforms are, the largest decentralized
right,
computing power networks that we have on the planet, and it just seems natural, the natural evolution. I mean, humans, we love our freedoms, we love our liberties, we love our sovereignty. And to go in the reverse of that, which is the big talk around the CBDCs, it just doesn't seem that's the choice that humanity is going to make.
right.
I feel Bitcoin is is the choice for now. I mean, unless something else better comes along, but humans, we love our freedom, and that's not going to go away. So as we work through these stages and create more awareness in understanding around what is Bitcoin, what's its use case, and how it can be used in society, it just feels like that's the natural evolution we're going to go into. So I have high hopes for long term. So put your wallet away for now, and maybe later you'll
All right,
you'll be
Ruben. Well,
rewarded.
thank you so much for joining us, and really sorry about your loss. What a
All right.
bummer. Thousands of dollars lost in this FTX scandal is just really unfortunate. Hopefully, they've at least been able to document how much you had in the account so that if the time comes that you do get something back, that
Yeah,
maybe.
that's the. I think I might be responsible for that part, but we'll see. We'll keep in my receipts as much as I can.
Yeah. All right, Ruben. Thank you so
For
much
the
for
future.
joining this show.
Thanks, Kim.
In yet another example of the Democratic Party hypocrisy, Joe Biden recently passed the Speak Out Act to allow sexual harassment and assault survivors be released from non-disclosure agreements and speak publicly about their experiences of sexual harassment and assault. Now, obviously, this act is a great thing for survivors. No one is diminishing the importance of women being able to speak and not be silenced about abuse. But isn't it ironic? Tara Reid, who now works full-time for this show, once worked for Joe Biden and credibly accused him of sexual assault while working for him in the Senate. She's being featured today on Fox Nation's Tucker Carlson Today.
He used his power and resources to silence me. And I'm going to share something with your audience. They took a cannonball to my life.
Yeah.
They went after my family. So when that day, when he did that assault, he took my future. I didn't want to sleep with some senator. I wanted to be one. And that day, it ended.
Tara Reid is here now to share her thoughts on the signing of this act. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kim, today
Well,
to talk about this.
yeah, and thank you so much for being on it and talking about this publicly. As I mentioned, you do work for this show full time now, but you are not obligated by any way, shape, or form to discuss this. I know that these recalling many of these things are very painful, so we do appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about this. But first of all, let's get to the legislation and the signing of this. Obviously, it's a good thing. The legislation is good. But how did it make you feel seeing this happening? That it passes and then it ends up on Biden's desk last week. What was going through your mind?
Two things at once. I mean, on one hand, I'm very happy for other survivors to get justice and be able to speak about their experiences and not be held liable by a non-disclosure agreement, with workplace sexual harassment and sexual assault. But on the other hand, the person signing that bill was the monster that assaulted me and was my boss when he did it. And I actually, when I heard it, it made me burst into tears because it just brings it all back of how I am simply erased from history and silenced, and half the country voted for him to be president of the United States, some of them knowing that he did this. And so I have mixed feelings about it. But again, I want to emphasize any legislation that helps survivors, I want to support.
Right. Yeah, it is just really hypocritical. I mean, of course, it is great legislation. And there was previous legislation that was also signed by this administration that also made it to where if employees sign an arbitration agreement, for example, and that they have to, that states that they have to arbitrate these cases rather than going to court, they signed legislation saying that you can't do that anymore, that people can take it to actual trial. And now to see this signing of this act saying, look, you can't be silenced by people, even if you do make an agreement, these things you're allowed to go out there and speak. You can't be making these types of non-disclosure agreements. I mean, these are really good things, and we are happy about that. But one thing that I find the most hypocritical about this is just how you were treated, and that what I watched your interview with Tucker. Absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, I started to tear up just watching. I really felt like what happened to you, what the Democratic Party did to you, what operatives, I should say, did to you when you were coming out and speaking about it publicly. It is just absolutely hypocritical, especially in the era of Trump. Democrats went after Trump and was like, how dare you vote for somebody who's, grabbed them by the type thing comments and all, and yet then there's 7 of you actually came forward about Joe Biden. It wasn't just you. There were others. And we also see other evidence of and hear about other evidence of, more layers to this sort of behavior. It is very, very hypocritical. So tell us a little bit more about what happened to you, what you alluded to on Tucker's show about how you were treated and how they went after you.
Well, it was really stunning. The political, I expected pushback from Biden's campaign or Biden, I knew that there would be, or I thought there might be an investigation or discussion at least. But instead, a political machine came after me, the Democratic National Committee machine with all its operatives, and millions of dollars. And that's recorded in the FEC records of how much Biden spent silencing not just me, but other stories that would, tarnish, in his view, his image. What was really shocking was the amount of prominent Me Too women that basically just threw my case under the bus and just went out of their way to even make like the same kind of rape apologist kind of arguments that you hear, in other cases and direct them towards me. I think one of the other stunning things was the DOJ, how Biden weaponized even intelligence agencies to surveil me and to take my Twitter account under sealed warrants. For what purpose, we still don't know. But what was really shocking is that, I'm now, under surveillance and under investigation, hopefully that's not the case, but it happened. They took them under sealed warrants and I still don't know why. So this could happen to any citizen. And the reason why I keep stepping forward is because the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party, the inherent corruption of the Democratic National Committee, using its resources to go after citizens that whistleblower step up has to end. Yeah. And if they think that the playbook, as they call it, when they go after and try to discredit and smear anyone who steers from their narrative, if they think it works, they'll keep doing it. So that is why I've been very prominently speaking about this, even though I'm not sure I will get justice. Perhaps there will be a congressional hearing. I don't know.
Well, that might happen now with the GOP taking over, and we've talked about that before when you were on this show before. That there may be investigations. The GOP has said that they are going to be investigating Joe Biden. I'm sure that this will be part of those investigations, especially if there's many of you coming forward. What do you think? What would normally happen? So if a person in your situation, if it's not Joe Biden, let's say it's someone else, some other boss. Maybe that's less powerful, and this were to happen to them, what kind of consequences would that person like Joe Biden face typically?
Well, typically, there would be a criminal investigation and perhaps even a civil lawsuit that would be possible if you were an employee and it happened like it did for me during a workday at work by my boss. So there would be both a criminal and civil proceedings to investigate him, not necessarily me.
Right.
And there wouldn't be the media attacks. Now, it is an uphill battle for sexual assault and sexual harassment survivors to come forward, even with people that are less powerful. That's why there's legislation that's needed to be in place. Because unfortunately, there's been sort of this rape culture around America. And it's changing. And I think that one of those steps is really people being able to speak out. But the Democrats, what they did was they hijacked the Me Too movement, for instance. And the Me Too movement was supposed to empower women, but actually it just empowered donors to give to the Democratic Party. And when it comes to any Democrats that are being accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault. They simply ignore it, or they go out of their way to attack the person coming forward. So, sexual assault and sexual harassment, bottom line, it's not political. It crosses all socioeconomic borders and all political boundaries, and we need to treat it standalone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes from both sides of the aisle, people that with many different types of beliefs, many different races, cultures, religion, right? I mean, these things are happening to everyone, and it doesn't have oh no, that's just one side that does that. But you're right, Democrats sort of treat it that way. And that is that's why this is so hypocritical. I mean, again, it's this great legislation. It's great that these types of things are being passed, but at the same time, own up to it all the time, not just some of the time or part of the time. Curious, what do you want to have happen now? So let's say the GOP does go through with these investigations. They don't only investigate Biden for the Hunter Biden laptop and Ukraine dealings and, maybe even other foreign sort of interactions that he may have had regarding, especially with Hunter kind of being like the go-between between the big guy and these other foreign entities. What would you want to see if an investigation goes forward? What kind of consequences for Biden?
Well, first, it would be so great to be able to go under oath and to give my testimony. And also, it would open the door for other witnesses that were contemporaneous and maybe other victims to come forward in a safer way under that kind of investigation. But the consequences, in my opinion, this is my opinion and my experience, is because of the level of corruption he's engaged in, I think he should step down. I think he should be impeached. And I think that needs to be a message for everyone in America that no one is above the law. And right now, that message has gotten very clouded and pushed aside. But in my opinion, he has abused power in many different ways, not just in my case. And Joe Biden is not above the law.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that, if he has sexually assaulted people, you and possibly others, or even just one is too many, I mean, it seems like he would have to go to jail. I mean, that just seems to me like, I don't know all the laws when it comes to sexual assault, but I think many people assume that if someone is assaulted, the person goes to at least jail for some amount of time. That's what people think. At least that's what we're hoping and assuming. We're not assuming that they're just running around in the streets and now running our country, right?
Right. And I think, with a felony, which mine was under the technical terms, it could be considered a felony sexual assault. It could be up to 20 years in prison. Now, do I realistically think that will happen to Joe Biden? Well, there's constitutional arguments about a sitting president being convicted, as you know, Kim. But and there's really no settled law on the whole matter. But one thing is clear. I believe he's not fit to be president, and that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And, based on what he's done in the past and in the present, frankly. So that's, hopefully there will be at least a proper investigation, if nothing else, into him and not me.
Well, yeah, especially that part. I mean, the fact that they just absolutely dragged you through the mud and made you an example for others. Like, don't step forward. Look what happened to Tara Reade. This is what'll happen to you too. That part is really disgusting. But they dragged Kavanaugh around, right? I mean, they did everything they could to bring up Kavanaugh's past, which was a very, very long time ago, similar to this, as far as like this is way in the past, and yet they had no time. They had no qualms at all about trying to go after Kavanaugh, yet they don't even want to think about it when it comes to Joe Biden. I also find that just, it's very team-like rather than being, having a moral or ethical stance on something as egregious as sexual assault.
Oh, I would go further. I think we've entered like a mafia state. And I think it's the whole way they're protecting Biden, the Democratic elites and the people in the party. It's like circling the wagons and just protecting them no matter what they do. And it's not okay. And, the United States needs to not be a mafia state, in my opinion.
Well, Tara, thanks for coming on and talking about this. Again, your segment on Tucker Carlson, it's a very powerful segment on Tucker Carlson today. He also featured it last night on his news program, Tucker Carlson Tonight, a little clip from it, from his full podcast show. Tucker Carlson today. It was a very, very powerful piece. So thanks for being on. I know this is not the same. Working for this show is not quite as prestigious as being a senator, which I know was your ultimate goal in life. I'm sorry you ended up here, but I'm happy you're here. I'm very grateful for you and your work.
You know what? I'm really happy to be here, Kim. And I'm actually, writing is very healing, and it's part of what I do for your show. But I'm honored to be with you, with your show, and thrilled. And, it was a long time ago when I wanted to enter politics. But as you can, it was very clear that wasn't a goal that I was going to pursue at any time in the future after what I experienced. And I'm really happy with my life now. And I feel like rebuilding and healing is important. And perhaps maybe even this congressional hearing, if it happens, a little bit of justice.
Yeah, let's hope. We can certainly hope. All right, Tara Reade, you can also check her out. Go to her Twitter account. We put that on the screen for you. And there you can find her podcast. She also has written a book, and I believe more to come. So, and obviously you can always reach out to her here on the show. So thank you so much. And we will be back. You're watching a preview of the new Kim Iversen show, which will be live streaming exclusively to Rumble, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, beginning January 2nd, with clips published on other platforms. We hope you join us after we officially launch. Thanks for being here.